Hello.
What's up, buddy? How you doing?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
You're like, good. You're like, I can place the face. I'm trying to figure out where this bald head came from.
Yes, you do look familiar.
That's because we did a Instagram live about a year ago together for our first podcast launch. You joined me as my guest. So Stephen Scoggins.
Stephen Scoggins. Yes. How are you?
I'm doing good, dude. How about yourself?
Good to reconnect.
Yeah, man. Excited about your show, man. This is a really cool concept.
Thank you. Stephen Scoggins. Yes, now I remember. I was like looking at you, I was like, Stephen Scoggins. Is that
you had that look.
Scoggins?
That guy looks a little familiar. Where have I seen that guy before?
Yes, indeed. We have the same barber.
That's right. We sure do. Although I need to go to the same place to get a hat, but I haven't figured out a way to get there yet.
I do have a cool hat. So Stephen, tell the people who don't know you who you are.
Oh gosh. It's an easy answer. I'm a serial entrepreneur, author, speaker, own 7 businesses across several states. And I started my journey off homeless, which is kind of how we originally connected back in the day. I mean, you were a guest on my show, Stuck to Unstoppable, probably a year ago. And I kind of felt like we were brothers from another mother. And unfortunately, I hadn't had a chance to reconnect with you until today. So I'm excited to see you, man.
Wow. So tell us, I remember the homeless story, but if you can share that with us, that would be beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was a little bit different. People ask me all the time, so, how did you become homeless? And if I'm being honest with them, I say pride and arrogance. What happened was I grew up in a pretty difficult environment and, ended up meeting my first mentor, a guy by the name of Steve Myrick, who ended up believing in me. 19 years old, he gives me a business, gives me all the things that I need to start a successful business. And at 19 years old, I go and make really good money. Problem was I'd never had the character and the integrity to actually handle that kind of income stream. And like any knucklehead who's never handled money before, grew up in a more of a impoverished style environment, I blew all of it. And lo and behold, through a lot of bad choices, a lot of bad direction, ended up with severe anxiety, severe depression, almost took my life, and found myself, unfortunately, sleeping out under the stars every now and again, or a borrowed friend's car, or couch surfing, and all this kind of stuff. And that experience taught me a great deal about what was important. And it's funny, I didn't really truly understand the value of anything until I had lost everything. And now I kind of have a better perspective. At least I feel like I have a better perspective of what's most important in life, which is your family, your love, your friends, and your impact. So that's kind of the short-winded story of the homelessness.
And how did you go from homelessness to not being homeless? What was the story behind that?
Yeah. So ironically, it would end up becoming in a public bathroom. All right. So a lot of times when you're in that environment, and you haven't completely succumbed to the environment, because a lot of times when you go into that environment, if you don't have intentions of getting out in that environment, you become essentially part of a gypsy community, essentially. And as a result, you end up using a lot of public restrooms. And I went to a public restroom. I looked into the mirror and I just asked myself, like, how the hell did you get here? Like, what have you done? Like, what are your beliefs? What are your mindsets? What are the types of things? What in the world? And I began to weep a little bit uncontrollably. And then one of the important quotes that Steve Myrick, my first mentor I mentioned a second ago, gave me was this quote that says, you have to be willing to do today what others won't, so you can have tomorrow what others don't. Now, Steve Myrick was a man of means. He was also one of the most generous men I've ever met in my life. It wasn't uncommon for him to go into an environment or a restaurant of sorts, find out that there was a single waitress there that maybe had a child or something like that, and for him to leave $1,000 tip under a basket of hush puppies. So that's, it's southern pieces of cornbread is basically what it is, rolled up in little tubes, and walk out the door, never say a word. And those types of things were flashing back in my mind. And I just knew that I needed help. So I reached out to my family at the time, who, again, my homelessness in many cases was self-imposed, because at any point in time, I could have reached out to my family and they would have given me some help. But I finally reached out to my family. They came and got me. And then I couch rode for probably a good 3 weeks. My father put me back on the framing crew that essentially for the same man that I had kind of more or less betrayed the year earlier. And after working the first week and some time and getting my first paycheck on a Friday afternoon around 2:00, Steve Meyer comes back around in his Jeep, and he's kind of come up. My dad goes off to get the checks, and about that time, I just had this fire in my belly, and he's walking back this way. I'm walking back this way, and my dad's like, "Where in the world are you going?" Like, last thing he expected me to do was to go and talk to Steve, right? Given the prior year. But I'd forgotten piece of the story that I didn't mention was, prior to him showing up on the job site, my dad had sent me next door to reframe a garage door. So that's the framing that actually holds the garage door itself. And while I was there, I was forced to watch the guys who taken over for me do the work that I used to do with the equipment that I used to have that Steve had given me. And I remember hearing them badmouth Steve about how this guy wasn't generous. He wasn't considerate. I'm like, there's no way. And in the construction industry at the time, they had something called a draw schedule. So let's assume something cost $10,000. Well, if you were 50% done, you could withdraw $5,000 against the job. Well, these guys were 70% drawn on a 30% completed project. So Steve had already shown them immense grace by letting them overdraw on the work that they had already done. So I got really fired up and really angry. And as I'm walking back away from there, I just remember it filling my spirit, almost like, isn't that what you did? Didn't you take generosity and not repay it with generosity? Didn't you just take it and kind of keep it? And the crazy thing was, when Steve finally came back around there and I made that walk past my dad, those moments were kind of playing in my head, but it was the courage that I needed to actually go up and knock on the window. He rolls the window down, big old pearly white dentures. He said, "How's your head now, boy?" I said, "Well, it's getting better." "And what can I do you for?" Southern guy. And I said, "Well, I just overheard these guys are not coming back. Da, 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 da. They said they're not coming back Monday. If they don't come back, can I take back over?" And he laughed at me. He's like, "Boy, you ain't even got no tool belt on. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? You ain't got a tool belt. You ain't got no ladders. You got no." I said, "You don't understand. This is something I have to do. This is something I've got to do. And if you'll give me this second chance, if you'll give me this opportunity, I will never let you down ever again." And it stunned him. He sat back in his chair and he kind of put his hand on his face and he's, I can't buy you any more tools. I can't buy you the trucks. I can't do this stuff for you. And I'm like, "I don't need you to." "Well, how are you going to, I sold everything to them. They own all that stuff. I'll figure it out before Monday." Yeah, before Monday. So it was funny. He finally reluctantly agreed to let me finish the house that those guys were working on if they didn't come back Monday by 9 a.m. So not knowing that, whether or not they're going to be there Monday or not, I start walking back towards my father. Steve drives off, and lo and behold, he goes over and he opens up the van door, starts pulling tools out. I'm like, "What are you doing?" He says, "Do you remember what we used to make the ladders out of when you were a kid?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "What was it?" "Wood." "All right. How about the walk boards?" "What?" "Wood." "Okay. The pump jack post." "Wood." "Saw tables, cut benches." "Wood." "All right, boys, start pulling lumber out of the trash piles. We got work to do." And we literally built my scaffolding and everything that I needed, not knowing if I was going to have this opportunity come Monday morning. Now, again, keep in mind, this is the guy that I betrayed just a year earlier. But I went through a massive humbling of, as you can imagine, as part of that journey. And ultimately what happened was at 7:00, I'm sitting there on the curb. He comes up on Monday morning and I'm like, "Can I go yet?" He's like, "It's not 9:00 yet." He does that 2 or 3 times. We kind of bicker back and forth a little bit. Let me go. At 9:02, he kind of rolls back around the thing. He said, "Boy, what you waiting on?" And lo and behold, that became the first property that I did of now a company that does close to 8 figures in revenue and is in 2 states now and employs a few hundred people across those states. So that's how I got started breaking free from homelessness and also becoming what's now known as a serial entrepreneur.
That's an amazing story. People can learn a lot from just being all the way down in the dumps and finding your way through that, right? Yeah. And I mean, if as I sit here looking at you, I'm like, it's not even, can't even go through my mind that you could ever have been homeless, right?
Yeah.
So you had that one moment where you kind of found your way back to let's say not your best, but better than where you were, how did you build on it?
Well, I think it comes along the journey with being willing to humble yourself and knowing that you need help. Right. I'm a big fan of the program, The Kindness Diaries. And you and I shared that when you were on my show, not, a year ago or whatever. And one of the things that I've seen in every one of those instances is when you humble yourself in front of someone else who can help you, they tend to help you. It's rare that someone repays your humbleness with frustration or pain or an additional level of adversity. Many times, if people think you're sincere, they have zero problem helping you. And one of the things that I love so much about that environment was that opened me up to mentors that I had previously shut the doors to. And see, I discovered a long time ago that most people are not overcoming their adversity simply because they're not allowing themselves to overcome it. They're not allowing for the relationships. They're not allowing for the tactical techniques. They're not allowing for the books and the resources and the videos and all these different things that can inspire a whole brand new level of you. They're not allowing for it. I have the saying that says you are where you are today because that's all you've allowed yourself to be. And one of the things I've discovered is people who naturally end up doing great things in life are people who just take big chances, humble themselves routinely, and then learn as constantly as they possibly can, day in and day out. And I think that humility and that confidence, as well as the teachability, is what, call it universe, call it God or whatever, but it brings things to you in such a way that, well, other doors can't be open without it.
And how do you get to a place where you actually push yourself to become your best self? Because it's easy to be like, you got to become your best self. But there are moments in our lives where we don't have that capacity to take that leap. So what would you say to the person that's like, I want to become my best self. I want to do great things, but they just can't for whatever reason? How would you get them to take that leap that you took?
Well, I think the first thing you have to do is you have to tackle whatever life lie is standing in your way, right? The life lie is the very words that you tell yourself when you really know you need to do something, but you don't really want to do something because it puts you outside of your comfort zone. I've spent a lot of time on coaching calls today with some clients for what we do. And there was a reoccurring theme today. And the reoccurring theme today is I'm not good enough. That was the reoccurring theme. And in all these different calls today that I had today, it was interesting that became the theme of the day, because in 9 different circumstances, 9 different areas, 9 different ways of impeding your progress, at the core of it was I'm not good enough. So you have to distill what that life lie is for you. I remember my father saying one time, this is, before, my dad's a great dad now, great grandfather now, but he missed a huge chunk of my earlier life. And I remember when his first business failed, he made this comment to me on a job site. He said, Scoggins don't get ahead, they get by. And it always stuck with me. And for a long time, for almost a decade, I almost lived that lie out, right? So if you think about it, if Scoggins don't get ahead, they get by, that's directly connected to I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy enough to receive a blessing or receive an opportunity or potential. So I think when it comes down to it, if you're in that season where you're trying to figure things out and you're trying to just maybe kind of get unstuck, what I would encourage people to do is discover what that life lie is. Now, once you identify that life lie, for instance, Scoggins don't get ahead, they get by, or I'm not good enough. Once you identify it, now you have the awareness of it, and now you can actually do the reverse opposite of it. So if I know that that's what I'm telling myself, I have to catch myself in the moment and say, that's not true. And then if that comes in as a whisper, I go back at it with a shout. I am good enough. I am worthy enough. I can do great things. I am worthy of great relationships. I am worthy of opportunities. I'm also deeply committed to making sure if those things come to me, that I'll actually take the next step in growing myself to a place where I can now give that to other people. And I think at the end of the day, if we're really trying to live our best life, we have to take the focus off of ourselves and put it back on other people, which is one of the reasons I think you and I have always connected so well, is because we're always so focused on others, right? Because we're both trying to create legacies that outlive us. And we create that legacy that outlives us by simply taking the knowledge and the wisdom that we've gleaned over the number of the years, being super present in a conversation, and actually giving that away for free with no expectations of return. And as a result, call it God, call it universal, whatever. The door's open. So if you're in that need, find the life lie, challenge the life lie, and look at the learning lessons that you can give back to somebody else.
What happens if you can't find the life lie? If you don't have the awareness needed? Because many of us don't know why we are not doing what we want to be doing. You see what I'm saying? It's like, how do you get someone to see?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it came down to mentorship, right? And, so it's funny, mentors have a way of seeing you differently than you see yourself just regardless, right? Not only do they see your strengths and your struggles and your blind spots, they also see the intangible things that are kind of in obstacles in your way. Now, one of the number one questions I was getting when I was traveling and speaking not that long ago was, well, you keep saying we need a mentor, we need a guide, we need somebody who's been there and got the t-shirt and can actually help us understand that and see things from a different angle. I can't find them. I don't have one. I don't have access to one. I'm like, come on. Really? 2019, 2020, 2021, going into 2022, you can't find a mentor? Yeah, I can't find one. I said, do you know what a book is? Yeah. Well, great. There's historical mentors in there that have already been there, done that, and got the t-shirt. Do you know somebody who's on a similar journey, maybe who's either a little ahead of you or kind of where you're at? Well, yeah. Okay, well, that's a peer-to-peer mentor. That's somebody that you can actually talk to and bounce ideas off of and share struggles with and hold each other accountable. Do you have somebody that you admire where they're at in their life and maybe the things that they've done, the accomplishments that they have, but more importantly, have suffered a great deal or have been through some very difficult things that you can also relate to themselves, but have managed to break free? Yeah. That's an aspirational mentor, right? And the reality is there's mentors all around us. They just may not be you and I talking on a call together. It may not be you and I having a coffee together. It might be me watching one of your best keynotes and just gleaning wisdom and information from that and using that to help other people. And to me, you're always surrounded by mentorship if you're open to it. Whether it's a book, whether it's a peer-to-peer, whether it's an aspirational mentor, or even the fourth one, which is the digital mentor, right? We're doing digital mentorship right now, right? Because we're going to put this out into the world and somebody's going to see it and God willing, it's going to bless them, right? They're going to get encouragement from it and they're going to get transformation from it. And it just takes one really good idea to kind of kickstart everything. Just one.
It does indeed. And I love the way you say books are mentors. Because then I've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of mentors because reading has been something very, very important to me. And it's helped me get through many, many difficult struggles. And you're right. There's always a way. And if you don't know anyone, then you're in a foreign country, you can go onto Amazon, download a Kindle book and have a Kindle mentor, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So, I mean, look at it this way. If you're doing the same travel thing, right? So we all know that you're a world traveler. You've traveled all over the place. Every time you ask for directions or ask to be introduced to somebody or ask for something like that, that is a mentor helping you do something, gain something, teach you something every single time.
So you basically, because my question was, how do you get people to be more aware? Your answer was find a mentor.
Yeah, greater perspective.
Absolutely. So what you talked briefly about legacy. What would you like your legacy to be?
You know, it's interesting. I had this interesting situation that happened not long ago. My Steve Myrick's granddaughter came to tour my live event center. I own a live event center here in Raleigh, North Carolina, that we do host live events and all kinds of stuff. And, you know, she came here to kind of view that and kind of see, and in doing so, she got to see his words all over the building and different things and hear my team actually say things back, one-liners that she's like, my granddaddy used to say that. And towards the tail end of the interview, not the interview, but the tour, I was walking her towards the front door, and about that time, one of the young men that's on our team walks up, and he's standing there, and I was like, "Hey, Connor, this is Steve Myrick's granddaughter," and he's like, "Oh, I've heard so much about Miss Steve Myrick, and because I don't shut up about it." And then this interesting thing happened, and it lifted me up and guided me, And it taught me what legacy really could be. Because as we were talking, Connor made this interesting comment. He points at me and he goes, he's my Steve Myrick. And I would be lying if I didn't tear up a little, you know? And it was an interesting moment because I believe that the legacy that outlives you is nothing more than giving the best part of yourself to someone else to then give the best part of themselves to someone else. To me, if we all did a little more of that and a little less taking and grabbing and grinding and striving, I think the world would be a better place. But because we're so focused on gaining and not serving, we put ourselves in very difficult and trying places that never really allow us to step into the fullness of that. So I think a legacy that outlives me is always going to be something along the lines of taking the best of myself and packaging it in such a way that offers other people a greater level of opportunity.
It's quite extraordinary. You went from being homeless to basically coaching people to be their best selves. How did you get into the coaching world?
I'd like to say it was accidental, but when you look at all the events of my life, it seems very intentional, just not with my forethought. And I remember I had been in the business for maybe 10 years. We started generating, probably 20, 25, $30 million a year in gross revenue, which is great. I was excited. For someone like myself who grew up, kind of the way I grew up, I thought I had already hit the pinnacle of success. Right. And I had this interesting thing. I discovered that because I didn't go to college. I didn't have a high school diploma. I have a GED. But yet I had people working for me that had all kinds of alphabets behind their names, MBAs, CPAs, ABCs, EFGs, and all this kind of stuff. And I remember thinking to myself, I hope they don't find out who I am. I hope they don't find out they're working for a guy who never graduated high school or, has come up in a very difficult way. And I never shared the story with them. By the time that these people would come into my business, there was already an expected level of reputation in the marketplace, was already expected level of success, and we were growing and we were excited. But what I wasn't really good at is I wasn't a really good leader. I got defensive very quickly. I would operate out of insecurity. I would operate out of this sense of fear that I would be found out, this imposter syndrome, so to speak. And I remember one evening, after a specifically difficult day of trying to communicate to the leaders in which I was supposed to be leading and had no idea what I was doing, I went into my closet, which is just where I meditate and pray. And I sat down and I prayed and I said, help me find a better way. There's got to be a better way. This can't be all there is. Now, keep in mind, by the world standards, I had everything that I thought I would ever want. I had a nice home. I had nice stuff. And I was supposed to be happy and successful and full of meaning and everything. But yet I was just as empty as I was before I had anything. And I went through this process of kind of this meditative process. And then the very next day, someone introduced me to a seminar that was coming into our local area. And it was a one-day seminar that a guy by the name of Dave Ramsey did called Entree Leadership. And I go there and I'm like, within the first 30 minutes, Dave's on stage and he's, speaking and stuff like that. And he's all fired up and all over the place and right, going like this. And I was like, I need that, whatever that is, I need that, right? So I run back to the back. I sign up before they even ask you to sign up, because there's always, typically a pitch at stuff like that. And so I was like, oh, well, I ended up going to San Antonio, Texas. And for 3 days straight, I basically learned how bad of a leader I had become. And at the core of it, it was because I wasn't being authentic. And at the core of that, it's because I didn't know what the authentic version of myself was. So that's one of the things that I refer to as the awakening moment, right? It's almost like when your soul wakes up and you realize that you've been sleeping and sleepwalking through life this entire time. It's like, whoa, what have and from that moment on, it was all about how fast can I figure myself out? How fast can I work on my struggles? How fast can I amplify my strengths? How fast can I have better perspective and people to help me around my blind spots? But more importantly, how fast can I get back to my team and tell them what kind of a knucklehead I'd been for 5 years straight? And I got back and had a 3-hour, I'm sorry, guys, I didn't know what I was doing. By the way, I was homeless. And they were all like, huh? We had no idea. It all makes so much sense now, right? And that started another 5-year journey forward of essentially me searching myself out, me opening myself up to mentorship and connection, me opening myself up to possibilities, me opening myself up to this interesting idea, which is I could be wrong at times, right? This kind of thing. And lo and behold, 5 years later, I had this interesting epiphany. My company had started growing really, really quickly again. And I very quickly realized that while on the surface it looked like a construction company, what I had really been building was a personal development company masquerading as a construction company. And once I kind of made that trajectory and kind of put those two things together, I realized that my hands taught me to use my head and my head taught me to use my heart. And now I use my heart to help other people's heads and hands and their hearts. And when you catch fire of that awakening moment, like I think there's a part of you that is not satisfied unless you're constantly giving it away. And I had a book come out and it did better than I expected. When you first write your first book, it's just one person reads this book and it helps them. It's just one person, and then the one person does, and you're like, okay, well, if just two people read this, and kind of build it up that way. Well, yeah, I went through that experience and I started speaking. And the next thing you know, I went on a massive roller coaster of self-discovery. And I guess you would call it self-actualization. I've worked really hard to die to my ego and die to the things that ego normally wants. Right. And I started putting this emphasis on what I think is the greatest purpose in life, right? Which is serving the person you used to be. So I wanted to take everything that I've learned, everything that I've gleaned, everything that I've gained, and I wanted to go back to help Stephen at 13 years old, Stephen at 16 years old, Stephen at 19 years old, Stephen at 20 years old, Stephen at 25 years old, covering a wide range of gambit. And when I started breaking that out, I started saying, okay, well, what worked? How did I get from here to here? What was my transition? Oh, I took this step. Oh, I did this. Oh, I tried that, but that didn't work. Oh, I tried this, but that didn't work. And that's when I developed Transform You, which is essentially the framework that is a really good tool in helping people kind of get unstuck and kind of moving forward. And that's how I got into it. And now I can't stop myself.
What is the greatest moment of self-realization that you had? I know you told me the story, but like the greatest moment of awakening.
Oh, there's been so many. I think I'll give you one of the most recent ones. So I did an event about 2 weeks ago called Transform You Live, which is our 3-day live event. And one of my good friends, Evan Carmichael, said he refused to come up onto the virtual stage unless my son come up onto the stage with me to do a panel discussion. And I was like, first of all, just tell me you want me to do that. You don't have to leverage me, Evan. It's fine. Like whatever. And but my son gets up there, and Evan had been in the chat windows with him for a couple of days, chatting it up with the people that were attending virtually and messing with the people that were attending live and all kinds of stuff and having a good old time at it. Well, my son gets up there, and apparently my son had made the mistake of telling Evan that he wanted to be a speaker, but he was scared to be in front of people. So what does Evan do? He orchestrates him being in front of people, which is Evan's way, right? Lo and behold, he invites him up on the stage. And he's part of the panel discussion. He's all super shy at first. And of course we Evan's, triggering things and trying to talk to him. But we had this moment where he picks up his microphone and we're having a conversation with the other panelist. And he goes, I have something to add. Is that okay? And everybody, like the crowd roared and had a great, and then we were like, yeah, it's okay. The greatest moment of self-actualization was watching my son say things that I told him 4 years earlier that I wasn't even sure he ever heard. Like he legitimately touched hearts. We actually have it on video, and I'm all over top of like losing it, like on stage. I think the greatest moment of self-actualization was when you realize that your actualization is now helping someone with theirs. And to have that special moment with my son, like I will never forget it. Like I will never forget that moment, right? He's watched me work really hard to be really present when we do live events. He's watched me really hard to be really present when I'm signing books or whatever. He's watched me, he's never asked me once to be on the stage, but once he got up there, he was a natural. And that lit me up. It lit me up.
It seems like a full circle moment, right? Mm-hmm. Because you were homeless in that public bathroom, looking at yourself in the mirror, saying, how on earth did I end up here? and having a total breakdown, right? Understandably so. And the story you just told me is an example of the total opposite of that, of your son going out into the world. I'm not sure how old your son is, but your son going out into the world, and because of you being able to become who he is meant to be. All right. And I mean, that is a powerful and very profound story. So thank you for sharing that. And I think in some ways that's a perfect place for us to end this part of the conversation, right? Because you've basically taken us all on a journey of like the mirror, looking back at yourself and seeing something you didn't want to look at, and then your son looking at the mirror of his father, looking back at him and seeing exactly who the son is supposed to be, right? And that doesn't get much better than that.
I'm all over top of trying not to lose it. Thanks, Leon.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, look, it was a beautiful surprise, and thank you so much for coming on. And I would love if you can email me the video of that moment with your son. I mean, that's doesn't get much better than that.
I'd be glad to. Thanks for having me on, my friend.
No worries. Thanks so much.
All right, much love. See you, buddy. Take care.
Bye. Hello everyone, it's Leon here, aka the Kindness Guy. If you like my videos, which I hope you do, don't forget to press the subscribe button and also to ring the little bell so that the notifications notify you that I have a new video out in the world.